very much, Bianca, for joining me today. Just to recap on what this podcast is about, it's about interviewing aspiring women that have reached success and can share some advice or their experience with other women in their field. So without further ado, Bianca, thank you so much for featuring today. Maybe if I could ask you to introduce yourself in your own words and tell us a little bit more about you.
Thank you so much, Emma. It's lovely to join you today. I'm almost 32 years old. I'm turning 32 in November, and I grew up in the eastern suburbs of Pretoria. I matriculated in 2008 from Hoërskool die Wilgert, and following that, I completed my bachelor's degree in economics. I also hold CFA level 2, and I've passed my certified financial planning examinations.
So what was your journey like to get where you are now in your career?
It's been quite an intense journey, to be honest. I was unfortunately not able to go and study full-time after school due to family circumstances. And instead of going on matric holiday in December 2008, I actually took up a job in an underwear store earning 2,000 Rand a month. And once I got that job, I said to myself, okay, well, what is the next step from here? So I enrolled with UNISA for BCom economics, and I got accepted and I started studying towards my degree. Slowly but surely, I started getting more appropriate jobs that's more relevant in the finance industry. Eventually, I ended up as a consultant with Capitec Bank. From there, I moved into Sanlam. And then finally, in 2012, I got the opportunity to finally move into Treasury and get exposure to the Forex market at Merchant West. From there, I headed up the Treasury department at a small company in Sandton called Exchange Capital. And that really enabled me to pivot into a bigger role at Peregrine FX at the time. And we've later renamed that business to Citadel Global as it's known today. And then in 2020, I actually got the news that I've been appointed as a director. And I've been with them for almost 6 years now. And I must admit the journey's been challenging, but it's really been one of growth, self-exploration, and really taught me to kind of step out there, try and get things done for yourself. Because I think so often we depend on others to open doors. And in an environment like South Africa, those doors are not always easy to come by.
And it sounds like you really worked your way up through the ranks until you got to the position you are now. So I'm sure there was a lot of lessons that you may have learned along the way. Can you maybe share on those?
One of the most important lessons is don't take yourself too seriously. You know, we all are so desperate and so eager to achieve success that we kind of forget to enjoy the process, to enjoy the lessons that we are learning. And I think as you get older and you look back, you actually realize how much it taught you and how much fun you had along the way, the people you met, the experience you gained. So first and foremost, don't take yourself too seriously. Secondly, you know, as a woman in a mostly male-dominant environment, you are going to be challenged. You are going to have moments where you feel intimidated. And I would say, learn to stand your ground, be assertive without being rude, and just know that you are there for a reason. You've earned that position just as much as your male counterpart. And then thirdly, I would also advise someone to be authentic to yourself. You won't ever be able to please everyone, so you might as well stick to who you are, and the right people and the right roles will follow.
You've obviously had so much success to get to the position where you are at the moment. So what would you say is maybe your biggest accomplishment? And with success, there's obviously also like ups and downs. So maybe also possible failure that has taught you a lesson. But yeah, accomplishments and then possible lessons.
Personally, for me, my greatest accomplishment is not a professional one. I was blessed enough to become the mom of a beautiful little girl in November last year. And I definitely put that on the top of my list for my accomplishments in my life. I think, you know, being a mom is such a blessing. And in terms of failures, I don't think there's necessarily a failure that stands out to me, but there's definitely challenges. And one of those challenges actually goes hand in hand with becoming a mom. You know, you've got so much fear about maintaining a successful career while being a good mom. There's so many criticism coming from society. And that's really been the biggest challenge for me, is to kind of find that balance that works for me. Being able to give 100% at work, being able to give 100% at home. And I think, you know, I'm still learning. I think, you know, all moms, working moms in particular, they learn as they go. But I also want to encourage young women who want to have a family to not feel that they have to choose between the two. You don't have to choose whether you want a family or whether you want a career. You can actually maintain both. And women are more than capable of actually maintaining both sides of the scale and doing it very successfully.
You kind of touched on this already, but seeing as that you've had such success in a male-dominated industry, what advice would you have for women in your industry?
I've come a long way in my industry, as well as in general industries, in terms of promoting female representation. We have seen quite a bit of legislation come through. I mean, recently Europe passed legislation to include females in top roles in companies. And I think it actually becomes such a difficult topic, because on the one hand, females need to be more represented in companies. You know, we need to start changing those scales. But you also don't want to feel like the job's been handed to you. So all I can say to the woman out there is make sure that you are as qualified as the next person. At the end of the day, you need to be hired on merit. And then the second piece of advice I would give to women is be that risk taker. I think what differentiates successful men from women is that fact that they are taught from very young to actually take risks, to take that leap. I listened to a TED talk the other day, and they said men tend to only comply with 60% of the requirements of a top position, and they would still apply for that job. And women won't apply unless they meet 100% of the requirements. And that's just one example of, you know, taking that leap, putting yourself out there. And I think as women, the more confident we can become in who we are and our capabilities, the more able we would be to put ourselves out there, take that leap, take that risk. The only way that you can actually excel or accelerate your career is by taking that next step and putting yourself on the line. The worst thing that can happen is someone can say no to you.
And having been a director of a South African firm, where do you see business in general going in South Africa in the future?
Once again, quite a controversial and sensitive topic. We've seen quite a few young professionals leaving the country. And on the one hand, it's very saddening to see. I mean, you know, I love my country. I'm a patriot at heart. I think there's so much potential in South Africa. But on the other hand, we must also remember that it creates so much opportunity for the professionals who remains behind. Someone needs to fill that void, fill that gap. And I don't think that should be overlooked. The other thing is that, yes, we are currently struggling. We are at a low base. But can you imagine the potential if the people who are in the country actually commit to making the country work, if businesses commit to enhancing the environment, enhancing the social circumstance of their neighborhood, you know, so I think there's so much potential. But the people who live and work in South Africa really need to put their boots on and say, you know what, we're going to make this work. I think so often we sit back and we criticize how the roads are maintained, we criticize government, we criticize the weather on a good day. And I think every time we criticize, we must go, okay, but what have I done in the past 6 months to actually make a difference? Am I contributing in some way? And by contributing, I'm not talking about tax. Everybody always complains about the tax and they say that's their contribution, and yes, it is. But from a socio-economic perspective, which is really an area where South Africa struggles most, what have you done in the recent past to make a difference and to contribute to society? And I think if everybody who remains behind actually takes it upon themselves to make an active difference, there's absolutely no limit to the potential that South Africa has.
And being both a director and a female in that position, contributing to that social economic that you mentioned. What are your thoughts or your comments on empowering women and also female entrepreneurship? Because obviously, as we know, entrepreneurs are the backbone of our country.
As I mentioned earlier, we must be very careful not to get the lines blurred where we get to a point where we say a female is in a certain position because of legislation and not necessarily merit. So I think it's really up to every single company to make sure that they include women in their recruiting processes, that they make sure that when they assess a woman from a credit perspective who wants to start a business, that they look at that woman the same way that they would assess a man. Just to level that playing field a little bit. I think often women are seen to be more emotional, and they're often classified as higher risk for loans and businesses because they're not seen to be able to commit fully to that function. And I think it's time that we actually sit back and say, you know what, women are capable of being soft and feminine and motherly, but they're also capable of being fierce when needed. So really taking that step and saying, we are going to include women in our recruitment process, and we're going to hire based on merit. If a woman and a man applies for the same job, they are skilled on the same level, they hold the same qualifications, we hire the woman instead of the man. And I think it's those type of transformation issues that's not discussed often enough. And I think women are scared to raise the topic because you don't want to feel like you're getting a free ride.
Yeah, those are definitely very valid thoughts and comments, and I totally agree with you on that. So switching it up a little bit of a curveball question that I wanted to ask you is there something that you're most passionate about that you would like to speak on as well?
So I'm very passionate by nature. I think people who knows me will tell you that I'm a passionate person. But when we start looking at something specific that's close to my heart, it's really the upliftment of people coming out of harsh circumstances. Having had to kind of navigate my way around it. Not having the best background, not having the best childhood. You often get stuck in that mentality that you can't achieve something, you're a function of the circumstances. And that's the picture that I'm passionate about changing, is by saying, you know what, your destiny is in your own hands. If you are willing to do the work, if you're willing to chase your dreams, you are able to reach it. You might not do it as quickly as your counterparts who were able to go to university full time, who were able to get internships at big firms. But if you stick to your guns and you are determined and committed, you can actually achieve success regardless of your circumstances.
If you had a dinner party, what 3 guests would you invite and why?
Oh my goodness, I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. I think my first dinner guest will be Vladimir Putin. As long as he, sits on the far end of the table and he doesn't make eye contact with me, then I'm quite happy. But I think, Vladimir for me is, when we deal with people and we understand the way they think, it just broadens our perception. It broadens the way we can relate to people. It broadens our way of how we can actually solve problems relating to those certain people. And I think, just getting to understand the mindset of someone like Putin. I mean, I don't think there's anybody who can sit back and say, I really comprehend what he's doing, what his way of thinking is. So I think that would be quite interesting. Secondly, it will be Donald Trump. And, that's just for entertainment purposes. So, I mean, if you put Donald Trump and you put Putin in the same room, there's bound to be some entertainment from that. And I think thirdly, Ryan Gosling, and I think that answers itself. It's Ryan Gosling.
What an appreciate you guest featuring. I think you've given great insights and provided a lot of valid information for a lot of women out there looking, maybe they're already in their career, looking to level up and needing that confidence, or maybe they're just starting out and wanting to aspire to such success. So I really do appreciate your time and for you coming on today.